All right. Good morning, Science 10. I hope we're all having a lovely Tuesday and we're ready to learn about the cell. All right. So just some housekeeping before we get going. So exploring the genome is overdue now. And number two, we have exploring medical imaging. This is going to be due on the Monday when we return, so on the 23rd. But I would encourage you guys to start chipping away at that throughout this week while we're not too busy, because we are going to continue with content and assignments as we go forward. Okay, so today we are moving on. We're going to continue with our talks about the cell. Okay, so we're going to be kind of looking at the organelles that are found in both animal and plant cells. And then we're also going to look at organelles that are only found in plant cells and organelles that are only found in animal cells, okay? So this first image that we're looking at right now, the one on the left is a plant cell, and the one on the right is an animal cell. So just take a minute here to kind of just inspect each image and look for differences between the two cells, okay? Look for similarities and differences. So one of the first things that catches my eye is we have a big nucleus in both, okay, which is surrounded by a nuclear envelope and by endoplasmic reticulum. These little bumpy things are called ribosomes, okay? So those are found in both. We also have mitochondria, these kidney bean shaped organelles, okay? Those are also in both. We have Golgi apparatus in both lysosomes. One thing that we have in plant cells, so the image on the left, that we do not have in animal cells are chloroplasts. Okay, chloroplasts are the photosynthetic organelles that are involved with producing oxygen from carbon dioxide and sunlight. Okay, mitochondria, we've kind of touched on that a few times in this unit. The mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. Okay, this is the organelle that converts the food energy that animals eat into ATP, which is the energy, it's usable energy for that cell. All right, let's get going. So just a little bit of a refresher, what is a cell? So a cell is a basic unit of life, and it maintains life processes with organelles that each have a specific function. We're going to talk about each of those specific functions today. Okay. A cell also exchanges matter and energy with its surroundings. So it's an open system, going back to our physics unit. A cell will carry out all of the life processes, so intake of nutrients, movement, growth, response to stimuli, gas exchange, waste removal, and reproduction. These are done on the level of a cell, okay? Again, a little bit more refresher. So 4 elements, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen, will make up the structure of plant and animal cells. And these elements are organized into 4 major organic compounds, where carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, which are fats, and nucleic acids. Those are our big 4 organic compounds that we deal with biology. Okay, so just some review of the cell theory. Just take a second here to try to remember what the 3 kind of rules or components of cell theory are. So the first one being all living things are made up of 1 or more cells, and the materials produced by these cells. Okay, so cells make up organisms. This was proposed by Schleiden and Schwann. Okay, make sure you underline that or put a star beside that. Make sure you know that that was Schleiden and Schwann's hypothesis. Number two, all life functions take place in cells, making them the smallest unit of life. So jumping back a couple slides, they're able to exchange matter, reproduce, move with their environment. Okay, unicellular organisms are all able to do that. And lastly, all cells are produced from pre-existing cells through the process of cell division. So make sure we know the three of those off by heart. Maybe get a rub-on tattoo on your shoulder so you don't forget those. Okay, these are important. Okay. Okay. So recall from physics, we talked about closed and open systems and isolated systems. So closed systems were able to exchange energy, but not matter. Isolated systems could not exchange matter nor energy. Think of the Large Hadron Collider in Geneva, Switzerland that we talked about. And then we have an open system. Open systems are able to exchange matter and energy with their environment. Okay, so we are considering the cell as an open system. Okay, these cells will maintain different internal conditions than external conditions using organelles. Okay, this is very important for us because if we are in a environment that is really hot, okay, the proteins in our body are designed to function at a particular temperature. And if we go into somewhere that is too hot, our body can overheat and that can eventually lead to death. So our body, our cells in our body, especially our skin cells, when we're really hot, they will start sweating. And this is kind of like an air conditioning system for our body. Okay, so cells want to maintain cellular conditions so they do not die. Okay, this is done by the plasma membrane, the outside of the cell, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on today. Each organelle has its own function to perform. Okay, so yeah, we have specialization within the cells themselves, and these organelles will allow cells to carry out particular functions. So for example, the mitochondria provides energy for the cell. And remember, it is the powerhouse of the cell. And chloroplasts in plant cells, these are going to be the sites of photosynthesis. Okay. So we're going to jump into cell anatomy now. So we're going to talk about all of the organelles in these cells. Okay. What you need to make note of as we go through, excuse me, the cell anatomy slides and just kind of like the definitions of what each organelle does. Take into consideration that not all of these are going to be found in both plant and animal cells, but a large proportion of them are going to be found in both plant and animal cells. Okay, so we're going to talk about organelles that are found in both plant and animal cells first. Okay, so number one is the nucleus. So this is this big organelle kind of right in the middle, one of the larger organelles in a cell. This is kind of like the brain of the cell. Okay, it controls all cellular activity, and this is where the DNA is stored. So the DNA is basically a big long code about what proteins to build and express, pretty much. So the color of your hair, the color of your eyes, etc., is all coded in your own personal DNA. Okay, DNA is unique to each individual. Even identical twins have some differences in their DNA, although the majority of it is similar. Okay, so that's a big one. Nucleus controls the cell, and this is where DNA is stored. Okay, next we have the cell membrane. This is right at the top, almost just as important as the nucleus. Okay, this is the outside of the cell. Okay, the cell membrane is the outside of the cell. Okay, and again, these two are found in both plant and animal cells. Okay, so the cell membrane is a fluid boundary, so it can move. It's not rigid. It's not like a metal box. Okay, it's fluid. It can move depending on what it needs to do. And this is going to control the movement of materials into and out of the cell. So this is really important as we go forward. Next, we have the cytoplasm. And the cytoplasm is like a, I don't know, it's a jelly-like material. And it kind of is all throughout the inside of the cell. And it's kind of a fluid that which organelles can be suspended in. Okay, so that is the cytoplasm. It's all throughout the cell, and it's kind of like a jelly-like fluid that keeps all of the organelles in suspension. It's kind of like a shock absorber, so to speak. Okay, so these three are found in both plant and animal cells. I'm just going to write that down. These are found in both plant and animal cells. Okay, moving on. So next we have the mitochondria. Again, this is found in both plant and animal cells. This is the powerhouse of the cell. So again, these are these little kidney bean shaped organelles, and they will break down glucose into a usable form of energy the cell can use. We call that ATP. Okay, ATP. And you don't need to worry about that in Science 10. You'll learn more about that in Biology 20. Okay. I've lost my pointer. There it is. Okay. Moving on. So next we have ribosomes. So these are these little bumps on the endoplasmic reticulum. Okay. Ribosomes are where proteins are created. Okay. So our body is, a large proportion of our body is made up of proteins. Okay, so these ribosomes are where proteins are made. Okay, and note that these are kind of surrounding the nucleus. So remember that DNA is stored in the nucleus. So is what happens once the nucleus decides that a particular protein needs to be encoded. Maybe it is a hormone, so like insulin. Insulin is a protein hormone. So the nucleus will send out a string of DNA for a protein to be coded, and then the ribosome will kind of attach onto that DNA. And then as it reads that DNA, it's going to create proteins. Okay. So these are found in the cytoplasm and on the endoplasmic reticulum, which is circulating the nucleus. Which brings us to the endoplasmic reticulum. We kind of shortcut this one and call it the ER. Okay. So no, if I say ER, I mean endoplasmic reticulum. So for the smooth ER, so no, there are no ribosomes there. These are where lipids are going to be created. Okay. And lipids do not require ribosomes to be created. And then we have the rough ER. That's where our ribosomes are going to be present. And these are going to be the sites of protein synthesis right here. And again, these are found in both plant and animal cells. Okay. So next we are on the Golgi apparatus. So the Golgi apparatus is right here, this blue looking organ over here. Okay, so once either lipids or proteins are made in the endoplasmic reticulum, the ER, it's going to be sent to the Golgi apparatus. You can think of the Golgi apparatus as kind of like a shipping warehouse. Okay, so stuff is created in the ER, it's made it to the Golgi apparatus, and then the Golgi apparatus will package these proteins or lipids into things what we call vesicles. Okay, so these are just like little balls that contain either the protein, hormone, or the lipid that was produced in the endoplasmic reticulum. This packages substances for transport out and in. So it packages substances for transports in and out of the cell. Lysosomes, these are kind of the cleaner uppers of the cell. So they will break down waste products and other foreign materials. So if there's viruses or bacteria that's able to enter the cell, if it's a healthy cell, it will be able to break down these viruses and bacteria before they're able to proliferate within the cell itself. Next, we have the cytoskeleton. So the cytoskeleton is kind of like a scaffolding for the cell, or like telephone lines. This is an internal network of fibers that is used for cellular transport. So if we need to get a vesicle from one side of the cell to another, they use a cytoskeleton to kind of transport even the vesicles that were created by the Golgi apparatus. Okay, we also use this cytoskeleton for our muscular contractions. We have a motor protein called myosin on our muscles. And if my arm was kind of like a big cytoskeleton, is what happens is that when we contract our muscles, the myosin motor protein is actually kind of like walking along the muscle. And that's what makes our muscles contract when we flex it. It's actually the motor proteins. So if I'm flexing, there we go. Okay, the motor proteins are actually walking to make those muscles tighter and contract. So cytoskeleton is used for cellular transport or muscle contraction as well. Okay. So the previous 9 organelles that we talked about are found in both plant and animal cells. Okay, so for the next organelles we're going to talk about are only going to be found in plant cells. So let's get rid of that. Excellent. Okay, so now we are talking about plant cell anatomy. So these are only found in the plant cells. Okay. So number 1 is the cell wall. So this is the rigid outer portion of the cell, and this will provide shape and support. This is found in plants, fungi, bacteria, and some protists. When Robert Hooke was looking at his cork cells, he would have noticed the cell wall of the cork plant. Okay, so note that the cell membrane does not equal the cell wall. Okay, both plant and animal cells have cell membranes, but only plants have cell walls. So if we look at this image on the top right here, so here is the cell membrane, which both plant and animals have, animal cells, but outside it is the cell wall. And this is kind of firm and rigid, and this allows for like trees to grow to such big heights because they have that cell wall, which will support the weight of the tree, of the branches and the leaves and stuff. Okay, chloroplast. This is a big one. This is the site of photosynthesis, and it is found in plants. In some cyanobacteria and some type of protist, we are actually able to create energy from the sun. But for the sake of, is it in a plant or animal cell, we're just going to say that chloroplasts are only found in animal cells. Okay, of course, there are a couple of exceptions to that rule, but for the sake of Science 10, that's what you need to know, is that chloroplasts are found in plant cells. And these are really important. This is the site of photosynthesis. So remember, photosynthesis is converting energy in the form of sunlight and carbon dioxide into sugars and also into oxygen that we breathe, which is convenient. Okay, and lastly, only found in a plant cell is a vacuole. Okay, this vacuole is a storage center pretty much. It will store whatever it needs to be, so water, maybe some food particles it could store if it's getting ready for the winter. Okay, and again, these are only found in plants. So jumping into the animal cell anatomy now. An animal cell does not have a cell wall, chloroplasts, or vacuoles. Okay, so this is the first image of this animal cell that we've seen. So it still has the cell membrane and the nucleus and the ER and ribosomes and mitochondria and the Golgi apparatus, okay, lysosomes, to name a few. One thing that it does not, or that it has, which plant cells do not, is that it has centrioles. And centrioles are involved in cell division. They're responsible for making sure that the chromosomes are all lined up at the anaphase plate. Okay, so animal cell has centrioles, and they also have cholesterol in their membranes to increase fluidity. Okay, so this is just going to make it so it does not like break if it gets to really cold temperatures. So I know that cholesterol kind of gets a bad rap because it's in a lot of unhealthy foods that we eat, like fast foods, for example. But actually, cholesterol is really important for our bodies, not only for the membranes, but cholesterol can also be used as a precursor for some forms of steroid hormones. Okay. So cholesterol is really important for us. If there was an animal that was living in the Arctic, so a polar bear, for example, it is going to have more cholesterol embedded in its cell membrane. So it is more fluid and it's not going to break at such low temperatures that are experienced by Arctic animals. Okay, so now we're just going to kind of compare the plant and animal cells. So similarities, they both have cell membranes and cytoskeletons. They also have ribosomes and the endoplasmic reticulum and mitochondria, Golgi apparatus, to name a few. Okay, DNA is located in the nucleus. This is the same for both. Some of the differences are that plants have a cell wall and a large central vacuole. Okay, so up at the top, here's the plant cell, here's our vacuole, here's our cell wall on the outside, and this should be changed to presence of chloroplasts in plant cells. Let me just fix that right now. Okay, and then one of the differences, presence of centrioles in animal cells. Okay. Excellent. Okay, so we just have a couple slides to go. We'll stop after the cell membrane. Okay, so the cell membrane is really important because it um, decides or it regulates what goes into or out of a cell. So we call this a semi-permeable membrane. So some things can go in, some things can go out, but not all things. So semi-permeable. Okay. So it chooses what can go in and out. That is regulated by proteins, which are embedded right into the cell membrane. Okay, so these proteins are kind of like doorways to get into or out of the cell. So if we look at this image on the left here, this is an electron microscope image, just showing the outer layer of the phospholipid. So if we're comparing this image to over here, so here are our transmembrane proteins, like we see image here, and the outer layer of the phospholipid is going to be these phospholipid heads right here. Okay. And this is what our cell membrane is looking like if it were animated. Okay. So the big takeaway from this slide is that the cell membrane is a semi-permeable membrane, which is regulated by these protein molecules right here. The cell membrane is made up of mainly two components. So one is the phospholipid bilayer. So here it is right here. This is a double layer of lipids with a phosphate group attached. And these phosphate groups will associate with water lipids associate with other lipids. So here are the phospholipids or the phosphate groups, and here is the lipid bilayer. So if I just want to take a look at one, so here is going to be our phosphate group. So remember from Science 10, phosphate group could be like PO4 minus, so it has negatively charged head, and then it's going to have these lipid tails. And from both sides, so that forms the top half of it, and then we're going to also have something like this. So they're going to look like this. So, oops. Okay, so again, these are the phosphate groups, and here are the lipid tails. Now, the phosphate groups are hydrophilic, so water loving. So that's why they face the outside, because then they can deal with the water. And the lipid tails are hydrophobic. They do not like to associate with water. So again, if you, sorry, I just lost my cursor again. There we go. Okay, sorry. So again, if you like pour oil or butter into water, you're going to have those kind of balls that form up because oils are hydrophobic. They do not like to associate with water. Hydrophobic. So hydrophobic tails face inward, hydrophilic phosphate heads are facing outwards. Okay, phosphates associated with water, and lipids associate with lipids. So on the inside, lipids are facing inwards, and phosphates are outwards. So it's a phospholipid bilayer because there are two layers of them. So we'll have one phospholipid here, and then we'll have another phospholipid here. They point together, and then together we have a phospholipid bilayer. That's what we call the cell membrane. And the second thing that the cell membrane is mainly made up of is proteins. So these are embedded throughout the phospholipid bilayer, like we see here, and they're responsible for transporting substances across the cell membrane. So they have a pretty big responsibility. And the ratio of like proteins to phospholipid bilayer is about like 1:1. So about half of the membrane is phospholipid bilayer, and the other half is going to be the protein carriers. This. I'm going to keep this up here. All right, so again, we're just going to finish up our talk about the cell membrane here. So the cell membrane maintains equilibrium within a cell by selectively choosing which substances can get into or out of a cell. So this is what makes it a semi-permeable membrane. Not everything can get in, only particular things. The substances that enter and leave the cell may be ions or molecules with unique chemical and physical properties. Okay, so one of the important protein, transmembrane protein transporters that we have is called a sodium-potassium pump. And is what it does, it removes excess sodium from our cells and brings in potassium. Okay, this is regulated by a protein. Also, a molecule that may leave the cell could be a hormone. So it could be it could be insulin, or it could be glucagon, which we've talked about in the lessons before. Okay, those particular hormones are created by the ribosomes on the rough endoplasmic reticulum. Okay, so we will stop there for the day. So I'm going to, so I will produce, I've created a activity worksheet, kind of summarize what we've learned in these last few days. So that is going to be today's homework. I'm going to make that due for tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow afternoon. I would recommend that you guys get that done before tomorrow's lesson, because I'm going to assume that you guys have understood what each organelle is doing and what the function is, and that kind of information. So it's important that you guys have that knowledge base as we continue to more subsequent lessons. Okay. Again, if you guys have any questions or need help with anything, please send me an email. I'd be more than happy to help you. And other than that, that is it for today's lesson, and we will see you tomorrow. Have a great day.